Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras, here with ILTV's Morning Briefing. The presence of American troops in Syria is a constant relief to Israel. That's because the soldiers have not only been helping Kurdish and Arab forces defeat the Islamic State, but also because America is committed to keeping other enemies away from Israel's doorstep too. That buffer was thrown up in the air, though, just a few days ago when President Trump announced that, quote, "we'll be coming out of Syria, like, very soon," end quote. He and Prime Minister Netanyahu have just held a late-night phone call to discuss what could be a big change in U.S. foreign strategy. If America were to pull out its forces as Trump has consistently lobbied for against the United States military's advice, it would add to a growing power vacuum in the region. Russian involvement in Syria has ramped up in recent years, some say helping provide cover for Iran to increasingly gain a foothold in the war-torn region. This was undoubtedly the heart of Netanyahu and Trump's talk. Meanwhile, the presidents of Iran, Turkey, and Russia are meeting today to discuss the very same issue, but likely from another angle entirely. The changing landscape in Syria could open the floodgates for enemy soldiers, even missiles, within striking range of the Jewish state. And with mixed messages and confusion from the White House, it remains unclear how or if America will be there to help should disaster strike. By canceling a landmark deal with the United Nations mere hours after praising it, the fate of nearly 40,000 African asylum seekers living in Israel is once again a big question mark. We are hearing reports now that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not only seeking to reopen the Cholot detention center, but also plans to introduce a law making it illegal for the Supreme Court to block the deportations of thousands of men, women, and children, even if it's done against their wills. This is more or less a return to the government's original mass deportation plan. Though Netanyahu has branded this community as illegal infiltrators, the vast majority are Christians from Eritrea and Sudan, and are widely accepted as legal refugees throughout the developed world. That's why the plan elicited moral outrage both inside Israel and abroad, including from doctors, former diplomats, top rabbis, and even Holocaust survivors. Regardless, Netanyahu blames the collapse of that deal on foreign pressures against Rwanda, the country now named as the place where asylum seekers would have been deported to. Other reports, however, show that the Israeli courts were those who thwarted the plan because they required Rwanda to assure the safety of deportees. Rwanda, though, has consistently come under fire for facilitating human trafficking and extortion of refugees deported from third-party countries, including dozens of cases from Israel. Netanyahu's reversal on a UN agreement, which would have seen half the country's migrants safely resettled to Western countries, has been widely seen as a political move to keep his coalition appeased. To that end, the government is now poised to rewrite the law, effectively removing the judicial system from the equation. Turning now to the United Nations for help, Palestinian Ambassador Riyad Mansour is claiming that Israel has adopted a shoot-to-kill policy against what he alleges are peaceful protesters along the Gaza border. He went on to accuse Israel of violating international law and human rights, quote, intentionally, grossly, and systematically, end quote. Indeed, 17 Palestinians have been confirmed killed in clashes along the Gaza border, but while Palestinian officials claim that those killed were conducting peaceful protests, Israel has alleged that anyone shot dead was engaging in violence. IDF forces have even released video footage from the border and photos of 10 of the suspects killed, showing them to be operatives of Hamas and other terror groups. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, for his part, has stated that, quote, anyone who comes close to the fence endangers his life, and I suggest that the people of Gaza invest their efforts not in protests against Israel, but in changing the leadership within the Strip, end quote. Mass deportations along the barrier between Israel and the Gaza Strip in at least 6 different locations began last Friday, when Hamas organized over 30,000 Palestinians for Land Day. The protests are slated to continue for 6 weeks, ending on Israel's Independence Day, or the Nakba as the Palestinians call it, meaning the catastrophe. So far, the protests have been marked by attempts to breach and damage the border fence, throwing Molotov cocktails and stones, burning tires, and shootings. The IDF has responded with crowd dispersal methods and targeted sniper fire. In an apparent anti-Semitic attack, 27-year-old Russian Jew Mikhail Verevskoy has been brutally murdered in St. Petersburg. Russian reports show an investigation has been opened. Verevskoy was supposedly on his way home from the supermarket when he was attacked and beaten. He died in the hospital from his wounds 5 days later. The primary suspect, 36-year-old Ahmad Karsha, is alleged to have premeditated the attack and was arrested but then released on bail. Verevskoy immigrated to Israel in 2010 and lived in Jerusalem for a number of years before serving in the IDF. He later returned to Russia, where he married, and his wife was in labor with their first child during the time of his death. In an interview with Israel's Channel 10 News, former United States President Bill Clinton admitted on Tuesday to having helped then Prime Minister Shimon Peres beat Benjamin Netanyahu in the 1996 elections. He claims to have supported Peres because he perceived Peres to be a bigger supporter of peace, but nonetheless acknowledged that he intervened in a closed-door way. Quote, "It would be fair to say that I tried to help Peres win the elections, and I tried to help him in such a way that I would not be openly involved," said Clinton. Netanyahu went on to win the 1996 vote anyway, allegedly making it clear to Clinton privately that he knew what side the US president fought for. But in yesterday's expose, Clinton then went on to blame the failure of peace negotiations in the Middle East on Netanyahu as well, despite failing himself back in 2000 with Ehud Barak and former PA head Yasser Arafat. He said, quote, "Until Netanyahu returned to serve as prime minister in 2009, the security situation in the West Bank was markedly better due to President Mahmoud Abbas. Now the coalition that Netanyahu is heading, I think, believes that the Palestinians are too weak to give them trouble, and it seems that security is working. But I still hope that someday, if they succeed in achieving any decent reconciliation, Israel will thrive even more." End quote. That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.